and welcome to Finextra. I'm Emily Horler at Cybos 2015 and I'm joined by Göran Fors from SEB and Angus Scott from Euroclear. Thank you very much for joining me. So why is ISO 20022 harmonisation important?
Well, the reason is because 20022 is such a flexible standard. If you go back to 15022, everyone in the industry followed the same upgrade path enforced by Swift, so everyone was working on the same version, which was great, but it meant that there was a very heavy overhead. Because if, for example, there was no business benefit for you one particular year, you still had to go through the process of doing the upgrades every year. So 20022 was designed to get away from that, and it was a much more flexible approach. It separates the data dictionary from the message standards, and it's syntax neutral. And as a result, everyone can operate in a much more flexible way. But of course, the consequence of that is that everyone's now working in slightly different ways. And so different infrastructures are doing upgrades at different times of the year, and working on different versions, which imposes a whole new set of costs on the industry. So it's important that we come together to harmonise, to get back some of the cost savings that we otherwise would lose through the flexibility that 20022 offers.
I echo completely what you say, Angus. I think the 20022 standard is, as you say, an extremely wide, the possibilities to use it is enormous. You can actually do a lot of different things compared to the other standards. And this means that when we now implement it, we're going to do it differently in various markets. And that's my major concern. As a user and participant in the banking industry, we will then have different setups and the harmonization is not obviously there. I see now when we have a discussion, I come from the Nordic countries, where the 4 Nordic countries are now getting a 20022 standard being rolled out in the CSD environment. But I'm afraid that the CSDs at this stage do not speak to each other in the way of harmonizing how that is going to work. So when Angus from Euroclear and also the others from the other 2 CSDs in the Nordics now implement this, it's really really important that we get down and sit together and define this. When we implemented 15022, say 15 years ago, we very quickly agreed on a market practice group that actually is still alive and still working, and that really made a difference in how we implement. So the harmonization part is very, very important. We also have the way of not really making this mandatory at this stage. It's not a clear business case to introduce it everywhere. So you actually open up for introduction of 20022 in various initiatives, but you don't really make it mandatory everywhere, and that also creates a lack of harmonization. So the importance there is huge.
And what are the major challenges in reaching a harmonised approach in the industry?
The challenges is, as I touched on a bit, that we introduce it someone is doing it there. We have the T2S environment, which is using, we've tried in the funds industry where we introduced 20022 some years ago, where we're still lacking of complete harmonization, especially of the usage of the standard, and we're still lacking behind using the old standards. I think the main obstacle is that we do not have a clear market practice group in this area sitting down together. And we don't have this that we agree on doing it during a period of time, for example. At the same time, it is difficult to do that because the cost of implementing this is really, really high. So we're treading sort of, we need to do it, but at the same time it's costing a lot of money. So.
Angus, do you have an opinion on this?
Well, I think I echo that. From our point of view, the challenge is really one of coordination. As I said, under 15022 previously, Swift was able to take quite a strong role in enforcing standards through the yearly cycle, whereas now they don't have that role, and so it's incumbent on us as infrastructures to get together and collaborate much more closely, which is something we're in favour of as a market infrastructure and as an open platform. There are other challenges as well. I mean, operating in the T2S environment, for example, we're reinventing some business processes, so we have to change not just the message standards but also the business processes underpinning them, which is also a challenge. And then finally, as Göran touched on, we still have 15022 in operation. It's still live, there's no date to end it. And so we have an interoperability challenge where some of our participants and clients are staying on 15022, some of them are moving to 20022. We have to bridge between the 2 of them. And we've never done that before. We've never had to operate 2 standards simultaneously in the market. So that's quite an interesting thing for us to work on as well.
So how does Swift fit into all of this exactly?
Well, for us, Swift play a vital role as a coordinator and a facilitator. If you look at the charter that we've been working on with them, they've brought us together as infrastructure, they've supported the process, and they've really driven it forward. So they have a really important role, even if they don't have that strict governance role they previously had. they're still a very natural place around which we can all collaborate. And then they have some more technical things as well. For example, the My Standards database they provide is a great way for us to publish and share information on these things. So they have a big role to play in the process.
Göran?
No, definitely, and I'm also on the board of SWIFT, which means that we have this as a continued dialogue. And a very concrete example is 2022 and the introduction in the fund space, where we do parallel standards today. And originally we said that we have an end date for 15022 and everyone are supposed to be on 2022 for those specific messages or for those specific processes. Then in the end it wasn't possible to actually do that at that concrete date, and we're now living in a period where we're evaluating where we can put an end to the old. And that is really what is going to be important, to put an end to the old one, because otherwise there will be a coexistence that can drag on, making everything expensive for everyone else. We also have just said at the last board meeting we need to maybe review the strategy for 2022 in general. Where are we on that? Some years ago we concluded that to actually force it into the settlement and reconciliation space, which is the large volumes and the large, it is not really feasible because of the lack of a business case. But that will, at some stage, that will come, because more and more institutions like Euroclear as a CSD or ICSD, myself as a bank, we will slowly implement 2022 in parts of our processes, and the more we continue working with two standards, we're going to have an increase in cost.
And do you see further opportunities of harmonisation?
There is a lot of opportunities in harmonization in general. What I think we need to do as well, this is a standard. I mean, we have to remember this is an ISO standard, which is a way of harmonization. I think we still need to be able to look more on the whole processing, and I think you touched on that already. We can't just stop at the specific standard. We need to be able to harmonize more on operational processing level. We have market practices in general. That includes the standard, but it also includes other things, how we work together.
Angus?
Yeah, I think the same thing from our point of view. As the markets themselves evolve, then we have more opportunities to bring things together and to harmonise. I mean, just a very practical example, in the collateral space, there's under regulation for OTC derivatives, there's a need to be much more dynamic in the way you update haircuts in collateral systems. So this is an area now we're working with SWIFT on to create new standards around that process. And it's some things around technical standards and so on, but it's also around what the business processes that sit underneath that. So as the markets continue to evolve, as regulation changes, there are always going to be new opportunities for us to collaborate as an industry and move things forward.
Göran, Angus, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching.